Hello everybody and welcome back to the weekly English shooting live stream. I will of course be your host Callum for this evening. This is the place for all of the past week's shooting news and topics, but don't forget that you can get involved. There is a chat box so you can pose questions for anything about shooting. You can have your opinions heard, whether you agree or disagree with me on any of the topics and discussions this evening. And if there's any topics or anything that you think I've missed, please feel free to pose them in the chat box below. Don't forget also to hit that like button. It's free, it only takes a second, and it really does help with the engagement of the channel, helping us grow, reaching more people to promote this sport and get them shooting. And if you like what you see, then please hit that subscribe button for future live streams and also more content. So I hope you've all had a fantastic past week. I have to say mine's been a little busier than usual, but we will get on to that a little later. But there's been some big news. I was hoping to maybe focus a little bit more on how I'm going to ask, please, beg for your support in something that I'm going for this weekend, but there's some fairly big stories that have come out, and I think very important to cover and look at, because I think all of them could have some sort of change to shooting sports here and certainly firearms licensing. So let's get into it. The main story, as the stream would say, is, well, should armed police be subject to the same vetting, the same checks that firearm certificate holders have to go through? Now, I'm sure there's plenty of people going, well, yeah, like, of course, like, that just makes absolute sense. But as it transpires, that's just not the case. Now, I'm not saying that the police are giving out guns left, right, and centre. It's like, all right, you'll be an armed officer. There's your MP5. Go and hit it. And armed police have an incredibly difficult job. They are continuously scrutinized by the public for anything that they do, and it's not a job that I would necessarily want to go out and do myself, the level of responsibility. But just like with everything, just like the responsibility of holding a firearm certificate and owning firearms here within the UK, there has to be the checks and balances, and you have to, at the very least, be a suitable, trustworthy person. And this is coming directly from the Met Police website. There was an officer an armed officer that was a repeated sex offender. And not only were there multiple accounts of harassment, abuse, attacks, but he was investigated multiple times, even arrested, and was still allowed to continue his duty. And yeah, as we read through this, and of course, I probably more than most would understand the scrutiny that firearms licensing holders are put under, and I only have to get a few sentences into this to really question how he was allowed to have access not only just to firearms but Section 5. This was a guy that could legally walk around the streets with a full automatic machine guns, with handguns, all of the stuff that are prohibited for normal owners here and firearms enthusiasts. And even just a couple of these instances that have been documented would be enough to remove the certificates and the ability for people to be able to own a firearm here within the UK. So Met condemns officer guilty of most serious sexual offences. So David Carrick appeared at Southwark Crown Court today and entered guilty pleas to false imprisonment, indecent assault, and 4 counts of rape. At a previous hearing at the Old Bailey on Tuesday, 13th of December, he pleaded guilty to 43 offences, including 20 counts of rape and further counts of controlling and coercive behaviour and sexual assault. So he's been remanded. So this is the full story of him being a prolific sex offender. But we're just gonna skip through down to the timeline. It's a whole in-depth. I mean, in a way, sort of fair play to the Met for putting out all of this on online. But career history, here we go. So he first joined in 2001, initially worked as a response officer in Merton and Barton. In 2009, he transferred to what is now the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, where he remained until his arrest and suspension in 2021. So I believe this is the same division of the police, but when I lived in London, we always used to see these red police cars, and I believe that is what the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command is. They specialise in protecting the embassies, VVIPs, and obviously members of Parliament. And I don't know if all of them are armed, but certainly the majority are. And I have it on good information, I have a good source that says that he was armed, he was an armed officer and would be regularly carrying a gun in his duty. So the important thing, I mean, well, regardless of being an armed officer, if a police officer is not of suitable character and is repeatedly committing offences, regardless if they're armed or not, I don't think that they should be a police officer. But the important timeline here is between 2009 and October 2021, he was armed. So that is where, personally, I think he should be subject to the most extreme and intrusive vetting, the same sort of stuff that we go through to obtain a firearm or shotgun certificate. So public complaints. Is this the timeline? Here we go. So 2000, prior to the start of his police service, he was a suspect in 2 offences involving the same female victim. One involved an allegation of malicious communications, and the second an allegation of burglary. It's sort of like, okay, give somebody a second chance, but this is already sort of questioning his suitability to be a police officer in my mind. He was not arrested and no further action was taken. So as far as the law, whilst there were concerns, there was no further action taken. There was no official, innocent until proven guilty, and he was able to go into the police. 2002, he was accused of harassment and assault against a former partner. He was not arrested and no further action was taken in relation to criminal investigation. That alone, okay, he wasn't an armed officer at that point, but this alone would be enough to lose your firearm certificate. This would be enough to deem that you are not suitable to own firearms here in the UK. 2004, he was involved in a domestic incident. No criminal allegations were made and was not arrested. So I think so far he's managed to basically skirt the line of innocent until proven guilty. So 2009, depends when he became a Met protection officer or a parliamentary protection officer, but constabulary officers responded to a third-party report of domestic incident involving Carrick. No criminal allegations were made and he was not arrested. Records held in relation to this suggest Met supervisors were informed at the time. However, no record of this has been found on the Met systems, and it doesn't appear a formal referral to the Met was made. So this is a bit, whether he was about to become an armed officer or whether he already was, again, this would have been enough to, in terms of a firearm certificate, not be suitable to hold it and would call into question, never mind having access to Section 5 firearms. So initially a suspect in Hampshire police investigation following an allegation of harassment, he was not arrested and the investigation was later closed. Again, how, regardless of, at this point, the innocent until proven guilty, there is already a documented history of allegations made and concerns about this guy's potential suitability. Having access to the highest, let's say, level of firearms here within the UK, if this would be more enough to call into question suitability for firearm certificate, why was it not calling into question his ability to maintain his role as an armed police officer? In 2017, he was taken to by Thames Valley officers having been ejected from a nightclub for being too drunk. It was alleged in 2019 he had assaulted a woman during a domestic incident, dealt with Hertfordshire Constabulary officers, specifically that he grabbed her by the neck. No further action was taken. He was given words of advice in relation to informing his change of command about off-duty incidences. Carrick was later arrested by, this is July. He was arrested following an allegation of rape. The victim ultimately decided not to proceed, and in August it was decided that and again, he still, as far as I'm concerned or I'm aware, he maintained his position as an armed officer through, throughout all of this. With the criminal allegation was not proceeded with, it was determined that he had no case to answer to in relation to any misconduct matters. In September, the restrictions were lifted, albeit Carrick... in 2021, the matters were referred to Met. At the time, Carrick was placed on restricted duty. So that is the first time that they took action, and then they lifted that restriction. It's not good, is it? And then they actually specifically talk about vetting. Carrick was vetted on joining the Met in 2001 and again in 2017. So in 2017, that would have captured this incident, it would have captured that, it would have captured all the previous incidences, right? So he was at least vetted when joining, but this further vetting should have called into question his suitability, no doubt at all. On both occasions, his vetting was successful. We do not know the vetting requirements. The types of checks undertaken were not as robust for either of these clearances as they are now. So it does sound like that they've made some changes in this, but have they gone far enough? A review of Carrick's case has also determined that were he to have been revetted following his arrest in 2021, according to the process in place today, he would not have received vetting clearance. So, yeah, a little bit more robust, but the fact that it shouldn't be necessarily reduced or relied upon for this normal routine vetting. At the end of the day, firearm certificate holders and shotgun certificate holders undergo continuous vetting. We've seen this more recently in the wake of Plymouth. There's going to be more on that a bit later, that it doesn't have to necessarily come round for your renewal or when you put in for a variation, but if the police catch wind of any potential criminal activity, any potentially valid accusations being made, they come away and they ask you to voluntarily surrender, or they will revoke your certificates as a matter of routine. Why is it not the case here with the Met? And whilst they say that they continuously review, that's obviously quite clearly not the case. With so many very serious accusations, investigations, and even arrests, the fact that he was allowed to continue his active duty, it asks some really big questions. Now, just like with firearms owners in general, we shouldn't let one bad apple spoil the bunch, right? We don't want one bad armed officer painting a bad picture of all of the other armed police officers. At the end of the day, they have a very hard job, but this does beg the question of whether there are the correct checks and balances in place. We've seen this not just with armed officers, but officers in general, committing lines of offences before they are ever caught. This is a real issue for public safety, and seeing as all of the anti-gun groups, all of the anti-gunners like the Gun Control Network are pushing for ways to keep the public safer when it comes to firearms, why are they not looking at the checks and balances in place? We already have incredibly effective checks. We already have incredibly effective vetting procedures for firearms owners for sport, collecting and hunting. Why does it seem that the same level is not present for armed police? And I think people would ask the question whether or not those checks and the level of vetting should not be even more for armed police, given the fact that they are walking around with the guns that they are, the fact that they are walking around in public with these guns. it doesn't bear thinking about that this is quite obviously somebody that is not suitable to be around firearms, period. And what's to say that there was it could have been very different if he'd have chosen to use those guns, one of their own with the same equipment, with you're walking around in most of the case in with plate carriers, and body armor. That's not you want to make sure those sorts of people are incredibly highly vetted and are the right people out there on the street. And it does seem to be a level of double standard that firearms owners are continuously under the highest level of scrutiny, and yet armed police officers don't even seem to go through a fraction of that. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. I could see there being fairly big changes as a result of this. I've seen people on Facebook raising the question that there is unfortunately a fine balance of attracting enough people into the police. There's massive recruitment drive at the moment, and fulfilling these roles and filling these roles, and perhaps unfortunately the level of candidate that they would want are not applying. Perhaps there is a compromise, but is this something, that's, I think, I guess, a very interesting question. Should we be, should we have no armed police officers because there's not what we deem to be the right amount of suitable people available to fill those roles? Or is it more important that we have armed police officers with maybe a few more questions about suitability? It's a difficult one. Unfortunately, we do live in a world now where armed police officers are required, and what do? Do you do you take a risky option? Well, they're both potentially risky option. Which one is potentially worse? Marcus Short, unbelievable, blatant case of protecting their own. Yeah, there does seem to be a level of this as well. A lot of these records suddenly not appearing. A lot of oh yeah, we investigated him, and then no further action because he's our mate, he's one of us. And it seems like being a police officer, being an armed police officer, gives you enough credibility that you're able to actually sort of pass off any of these accusations, where it's completely the opposite route, completely the other way round for firearm certificate holders. If you're a firearm certificate or shotgun certificate holder, that doesn't really give you any more credibility with the police. That makes you a much bigger target and subject to a much higher level of focus in continuously assessing your suitability. Bob Fife, they should have to pay out their own pockets for their medical report and licensing. If we want things to be exactly the same, on that note, somebody said an interesting idea. Of course, with firearms licensing and firearms ownership here in the UK, there's a big discussion going on about potentially centralising firearms licensing departments, having a third-party independent body that oversees firearms licensing, so it's taken away from the police. Well, this is sort of like marking your own homework in a way. If you are the police and you're responsible for giving out firearms to your guys, is there potentially not a conflict of interest there? That's like allowing a shooting club to hand out firearm certificates. That's like allowing an RFD to be able to sign your what's it called? To be your referee. We're not allowed to do that because of a clear conflict of interest. But here we have the police giving out firearms to their own guys. And the interesting question that was posed is, if there is at some point this third-party centralised independent firearms licensing, should the police, the armed police, come under that as well? Should there be a third-party department independent of the police that independently vets, assesses and continuously monitors armed police officers to make sure that they are still suitable and of fit character to fill out their role? A lot of people support the idea of this for firearms licensing holders and shotgun certificate holders, I can't see a huge argument for it being any different. It's all firearms, it's all assessing suitability, and at least that again would be consistent. It would be interesting to see how the vetting procedure and how the suitability checks for armed officers varies between county and county. Does it vary as much as firearm and shotgun, firearms licensing departments? Is there inconsistency? Is that part of the issue? Is the Met Police like a Devon and Cornwall in terms of its following procedure, crossing the T's and dotting the I's? Andy Carlos, yes, we will be getting on to the Right Honourable Keir Starmer and his comments on shotgun ownership in a little bit later. Henry North, haven't watched the live stream in a while. Looking forward to it. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. Don't forget, hit that like button if you are. I did see somebody mention, that's it, Alexander Dale. I assume you've seen the quote from the Devon and Cornwall Chief Superintendent dealing with the Plymouth inquest. Care to comment on it? I hadn't actually. Whilst we are going to be talking about some of the information that has come out of that inquiry, I don't think I've seen the specific quote that you might be referring to. So if you want to put a link to it in the comment section, if you want to just copy and paste it in there, I'll give it a read and I'll give you a live reaction. But sort of back onto armed police and, should they require the same checks? Brian Solomon, we need a MP to have the guts to stand up and say legal gun owners are not the problem and no need to make gun laws even more harsh and criminals don't give a damn. Yes, completely agree. We'll be talking about that in a sec. Happy, they definitely should have medical markers and regular medical checks. Well, this is something that I don't necessarily know that could be something already in place. If it's not, I think it really does needed. And certainly like the medical checks, I mean, police do undergo regular fitness checks, doing the beep test of like level 6 or something. But what about if you're an armed police officer? What about additional mental health checks? Again, I think it's something that's talked about with private firearms owners. Should there be the requirement to have a mental health assessment done? I think the need for that with armed police officers is probably even greater. I guess I had just assumed they would be scrutinized way more than an average gun owner. They should be checked much more scrutiny because they work with Section 5 guns. Absolutely. My sort of personal view on that is, I'm in exactly the same boat. I thought, well, they make it fairly hard and complicated to be able to own a firearm privately. God knows what it must be like going through the processes to become an armed police officer. Obviously, I think maybe the requirements, the vetting and the checks are not as robust, shall we say. Actually, I believe gun owners are scrutinized way too much, but they should at least be consistent. In terms of being scrutinized too much, I don't think necessarily the requirements. I mean, there was that whole thing with the suitability checks. I think there are some levels which have gone a little bit over the top, but in terms of the general process of getting a firearm certificate, as long as it's done consistently and fairly, I'm fairly happy with it myself. The process of an interview, getting your doctor involved, having criminal background checks, and the interview, sat down with somebody and talking to them for an hour, a couple of hours. It's very hard to sort of escape any lies or anything that you might be hiding within that. Licensed gun owners, the most law-abiding people in the country, unless they also work for the Met. Oh dear. Where was I? Left it. Always shoots it up into his boss/supervisor needs a rocket. Absolutely. Again, this is this is why it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't. It doesn't really even need any checks and balances in place here. But there were higher members of the police force that saw all of the incidences that were taking place and looked at it and went, "No, it's all right. Carry on." Front page of the BBC website, not enough staff. Let's have a look at that. And congratulations for 4 months as part of the Only ES fans. Again, if you want to support the channel and have access to a whole plethora of funky emojis, not that people seem to really seem to use them that much to my disappointment. I love seeing Connor's bearded face or T-Rex face pop up on the screen every now and then. Let's have a look and see if I can find this article. So, front page of the BBC. Nope. Let's try England. Oh, there we go. Topical. Former Met officers charged with child sex. What? Oh, it just gets worse. 2 retired Metropolitan Police officers have been charged with child sex offences as part of an investigation into serving Met Chief Inspector who was found dead. Holy... yeah, well, okay. Maybe this is just a case of, like, you know, Devon and Cornwall firearms licensing isn't exactly a shining example of what firearms licensing should be. And there are many firearms licensing departments that do an incredible job. So I think it's not fair on them that they get such a bad stick. Unfortunately, there seems to be quite a lot of firearms licensing departments that don't really seem to be fulfilling their duties in what they've signed up for. Maybe it's just a case of the Met is effectively the Devon and Cornwall of the armed police or police suitability world. Absolutely incredible. Here we go. I think I might have found the article. Plymouth shootings, not enough staff to deal with gun licenses. That's because I believe at least 2 of them have been sacked. The police department that returned a shotgun license to a man who carried out a mass shooting did not have enough staff, an inquest heard. Again, this excuse has already been used very, very early on, right? And I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Just like, it's like, oh yeah, well, we didn't have enough staff, so we just started handing out licenses left, right, and centre because we couldn't do the checks. No, if you don't have enough staff, you still carry out the same level of checks. You still carry out the same level of vetting. You just have to do it slower, you know. And I'm not supporting or condoning or advocating firearms licensing departments taking 6, 12, 18, 24 months to process certificates, variations, and renewals. But I would much rather have that than what happened in Plymouth, right? And I think that's probably sort of where we are. Firearms licensing across the country have probably looked at it and gone, yeah, maybe we weren't doing the sort of job we should do because we were trying to rush things through. Again, I'm sorry, that's not our problem. We pay for this service to be able to have firearm and shotgun certificates. We pay for it so that there is enough staff for you in order to be able to do it. So I just don't think this excuse holds any water. It does not excuse the multiple failings of this department in handing back the licenses. A senior police officer told the hearing that there had been a backlog of license applications when Davison first applied in 2017. Chief Super Roy Linden from Devon and Cornwall Police was questioned about the number of applications for firearm or shotgun licenses. He said in 2017 there were about 3,000 applications per year, and the force had the highest number of holders of certificates for firearms or shotguns within the UK. Well, 3,000 applications in 2017. I can't remember exactly what the fees were, but if we just say about £60, that's £180,000 a year. Like, what does a firearm inquiry officer cost? Right, 20, 30,000. Even if you say upwards of 30,000, you're still talking 6 firearm. That pays outright for 6 firearm inquiry officers. So if you divide that by 6, and then divide that by 365, that works out to 1.4 rounded applications per day. That's all they had to do, right? So this is why I don't think it holds water at all, right? Unless I've got any of that. That seems, so 3,000 applications divided by 6 officers, which the 3,000 applications, applications pay for. Okay, there's no. So it's 3,000 applications per year. Is that new applications? So let's give them a break and say maybe there's renewals in that, there's variations in that. Like, how many? I wonder how many firearms license holders. How? Oh, it's probably in this article actually. Just like how many shotgun? Say. Firearms license certificates, not license, certificates in Devon and Cornwall. Not forgetting as well that Dorset Police ended up merging with Devon and Cornwall. If they were already like inundated, if they were already over their heads, why did they ever agree to that? Over 1,000 new gun license granted in Devon, Cornwall in 1 year. I'm just trying to find the total numbers. So there's this article from Devon Live, and it said in Devon and Cornwall, 1,000 new applicants for firearm and shotgun certificate were granted in the year March. That was of application with 23 refused. A further 5,596 applications to renew an existing certificate were granted. So actually that number's a lot lower than the 3,000. Okay, it's different years, so I'll cut them some slack on that. But even if you say at the highest period when he's saying that there was 3,000 applications, and in this year there was, say, 5,600, that makes it a total of 8,600 new applications and renewals that they were required in doing. That's 4 a day per. Okay, that's 365, not working days. Okay, it's getting slightly better for them. How many working days in a year? 260 working days. Okay, right. So 5.5 applications a day. 5.5 renewals. 5.5 renewals and new applications. 8 hours in a working day, say an hour and a half spent on each one. Of course there is travel, they've got to go and do the interviews, and I'm sure there's other inquiries that they have to make. So I think that's a definitely a reasonable workload. But this is all hinged, actually, no, this is all hinged on solely employing the amount of firearm inquiry officers that the applications, the income that the applications generate. But if you include the 5,600, there's also the renewal fees for that. So we sort of got to go back to square one on that. I'm doing so much quick maths, it's unreal. So I'm just gonna, just for ease sake, I can't remember what the fees were back in that time, but if you say it's 3,000 new applications at £60 plus 5,600 application renewals at, say, like £50, that's £460,000 a year. And if you say that the average wage, of course, there's office costs, there's training costs, and staff don't cost what you actually pay them. There's additional costs on top of that. But taking 30,000, that's 15. That could pay for 15 firearm inquiry officers. So 8,600 divided by 15 divided by 260, that's 2.2 applications a day. That is the break-even point, right? And I know there are so many people that say, well, it shouldn't be. It should be subsidized by the police. This is effectively a public service that they are doing. They require us to have these certificates. Therefore, it's not out of the question for taxpayers to pay for it. And I think it's accepted, certainly back at this time, that there would need to be some contribution from various police forces towards the cost of administering firearms licensing. And yes, there's additional office costs, but usually these firearms licensing departments are situated in head offices, so the rooms are there anyway. In the total operational budget of the head office, the stationery, the IT equipment, and the general furniture required to house a firearms licensing is sort of a drop in the ocean. But yeah, based purely on the income from certificates, from the fees, that would have paid for enough firearm inquiry officers to be out. That would mean 2.2 applications a day. I think what we're seeing at the moment with the call for firearms licensing for the costs to be met, whether that's £150, £200, I think it's fair to say that the police are at the moment probably understand that they are contributing about half the cost. So let's say that Devon and Cornwall were having to put in £1 for every pound they received. Well, that's £500,000, let's say, a year. Not a small amount of money, but probably small in comparison to the total budget. And if they match every pound that they are raising, that means that they would be able to hire enough firearms inquiry officers, which means that each firearm inquiry officer would be responsible for pretty much one application or one renewal every single day. That doesn't sound at all unreasonable. So again, using facts, hard maths and logic, this sort of excuse that they didn't have enough staff, well, again, that's nobody's fault other than the Devon and Cornwall police. If you needed more people, hire more people. Right? It's like, oh, we don't have enough people to do this. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like, recruit more people. Like doing the basic math. And I know there's, some quite severe assumptions made in it, but getting a general feel of it, even if you're trying to do it as a cost-neutral exercise, it's 2 applications a day that a firearm inquiry officer would have enough funding to fund enough firearm inquiry officers to be able to process 2 a day. Again, I'm not, I've never been in a firearms licensing department. I've never been a firearm inquiry officer. I don't know exactly what is required, but I'm pretty confident that they can process more than 2 applications a day, surely. Heppy just checked the Basque report. Thank you very much. I've got my researchers away. And for 21-22, Devon and Cornwall had 40,000 SGCs/FACs. So divide that number by 10, you've got 8,000. So on average, they're going to be doing 8,000 renewals. So even if I bolster that into the figure, well, if you've got you're going to increase the revenue, so it sort of scales. It's still going to be at cost neutral. They should be able to process 2 applications a day. I don't get this. Anyway, I'll continue reading the article. The counsel to the inquest, Bridget Dolan KC, who is asking questions on behalf of the coroner, said, were there sufficient staff to deal with 3,000 application? The simple answer is no. He said that there was a backlog of application within Devon and Cornwall Police, but the force was not unique in the country. Again, that's not, everybody else is bad, so we can be bad too. Added, the problem had only got worse over time, so why aren't you doing anything about it? it's still the condition today. I think they have probably increased. Just found it. He said, the force recognizes the trauma that has been caused by this incident. It is our intention that this tragic incident will serve to drive improvement in firearms licensing, both in Devon and Cornwall and nationally. The inquest hearing at the Exeter Racecourse continues. Like, you know, drive improvements in firearms licensing. No, what it should be a stark reminder of is that if you have more applications that you can deal with, you need to go on a recruitment drive. You need to have the bodies in place to be able to do it. And even if you are mounting up a backlog, even if you are not able to keep on top of the applications, you don't stop dropping the standards to get through them. This is the whole point of firearms licensing, is to prevent a barrier to people like the guy that committed the atrocities in Keyham. It's when they neglect their duties and their responsibility that we get issues like that. It's nothing to do with the laid out suitability guidance. It's nothing to do with the structure and format of firearms licensing. It's to do with the application of it. And this has been a problem for a very, very long time. Alexander Dale, can I make an Only ES Fans t-shirt? I'll make you one too. That is an offer I can't turn down. Absolutely, fill your boots. If you need any images or whatever, get in contact. Drop me an email if you need like the logo images. I'm just intrigued. I'm intrigued and slightly concerned about what you're going to come up with. Wasn't the officer who murdered Sarah Evard a FEO who worked in the parliamentary and diplomatic protection? Not much was said from the public about that fact. I don't know that off the top of my head, but if it is, it's just even more so why something hasn't been done. Brian Solomon, Devon and Cornwall just sent a friend of mine a 12-month temporary FAC as he has a renewal date just run out and they haven't processed it yet. We actually had somebody in today, a good friend, who who's within Devon and Cornwall. He's actually within Dorset, but they've merged, so he has to apply to Devon and Cornwall. And he was told to submit, so I think he said his firearm certificate runs out in February. And he was told to submit his renewal forms in August. He's just been told that they won't begin to process his renewal until February. They are literally waiting until... Oh, and that's right. And they've already given him an extension. They've already sort of put their hands up and gone, there is no bloody way that we are going to be able to renew your certificate in time. We're being preemptive here. Here's your extension. We will get to it in February. And if it takes, another 6 months, 12 months, 18 months that we're seeing from Devon and Cornwall, they're going to keep on extending that. And this is the issue. This is the real concern, that whilst we have the checks and balances in place, allowing people, and it's agreed that 5 years is the optimum review period for firearms certificate and shotgun certificate holders. But you go past that 5 years, okay, maybe a month, maybe a couple, right? You can sort of understand that. But we're seeing people, 12 months, 18 months, like 2 years over their renewal date. You start to get into a significant amount of time past. It needs to change. And this is why there's so many people calling for, an independent body to hold firearms licensing to account. But they're also asking for a centralised system. Currently, my ticket is back with South Wales Police for a reprint after changing clubs. It's been a month and nothing back. My FEO called after I emailed for an update. He's on annual leave, but using his unpaid time to go through the backlog to clear up applications. It's absolutely ridiculous. Brian Solomon, Cornwall has 7 FEOs. So So that's what's happening then. If they've got 7 FEOs, now it could have been the fact that they had 9 because, again, we're going to get onto this. Two of them have, well, I'd imagine that they've been dismissed under gross misconduct. But they've got 7. They're basically, what they're trying to do is run the department as a cost-neutral exercise. We've calculated that, based on the estimate of revenue that department will be getting, it would pay for 7, 8 FEOs, and they only have 7 FEOs. So maybe Devon and Cornwall need to stop trying to run firearms licensing as a cost-neutral exercise, because it has cost and is continuing to cost public safety. Tony Vicker, my local FEOs average 6 to 8 inquiries every working day. That can be a mix of renewals, grants, occasional suitabilities, and their RFDs, clubs, and land checks. What's your thought? Andy Carlos, what's your thought on what Keir Starmer's comments was on shotgun ownership? We will be getting to that. That is on the agenda. But yeah, so some forces can average 6 to 8 inquiries a day, and I'm working out that even at cost, Devon and Cornwall would only have to be doing 2. It's really not stacking up. Now, I know there's, again, a lot of assumptions made in those cost calculations, but even so, there is a high degree of margin for error if other departments are able to average 6 to 8 inquiries a day. Based on, what did we work it out? 8,600. If you divide that by 6 inquiry, well, you divide that by 6. And then divide that by 265. That means if Devon and Cornwall managed to average 6 applications a day, renewals, grants, all combined, over 260 working days, they would only require 5.5 inquiry officers. And people are saying that they got 7. And they're not able to keep up. It just doesn't add up. It just doesn't, and ultimately, I think that has, that is what has caused this loss of life. Before we move on, maybe something a little bit more positive. Well, we are going to move on, but before we get on to the other interesting firearms licensing and Keir Starmer sort of topics, there is quite a big personal topic that I would like to approach, and I know I'm gonna assume and maybe go back to a lot of times where you guys watching, subscribers, regular viewers of this channel have offered support in various ways, and I know you guys always give it, and it can be as little as hitting that like button. Hit that like button. It can be as little as commenting on a video, saying enjoyed this. That's all levels of support. And I don't think I've really called for any direct support to myself. And this is only applicable to UK PSA members, but it is the UK PSA AGM this Sunday. And why that's important to me is because I'm going to be running for the treasurer role for the UK PSA. And I think one of the main motivations for doing this is that, of course, I'm incredibly passionate and dedicated to the sport of shooting in many different ways, in taking part in it, in trying it, but also promoting it and encouraging new people into it. I've been doing that I've been taking part in shooting sports and promoting it on this channel, or doing my best possible, my best job possible in promoting it for a very long time. And I always want to look in ways that I can do stuff better, and that I can give back to this sport as much as possible. And I think in the last couple of years, it's like, I compete, I sort of promote in a way from the sidelines, and I really think that I'm at a position where I can actually help and benefit an organization or an association from the inside in a formal role. So this led me, the treasurer position became open. Obviously, I'm incredibly focused and dedicated on practical shooting. I support all forms of lawful shooting, and I will take part in all forms of shooting, and I will promote all forms of shooting. But I think it's quite evident that my real passion within shooting sports is practical shooting and IPSC specifically. And within the UK, the national governing body for practical shooting and IPSC is the UK PSA. It's an association that I've worked with for a number of years now, going out to some incredible places to film the likes of the Rifle World Shoot, the European Handgun Championship, even out to Denmark more recently to film the Rifle World, the Rifle Championships there. So it's an organisation that I've already given a lot of my time to. A lot of my good friends are already council members and part of that association. Connors, he is the training chair for the UK PSA, and I just feel at this time I really want to. I feel like I've got a lot to give, and I can do that in a more formal role, and really help grow the association and help further the sport of practical shooting here within the UK. So, and here's my request, my beg. If there are any UK PSA members watching, come down to the UK PSA AGM. First of all, we get to what that's my first ask. Get involved with your sport. There's no point sat there complaining about things if you're not willing to attend these sorts of meetings and vote for where you think the association or your organisation should go. I hold the same view with voting for a government. People that don't take the effort to just go to the polling station and vote. Like, you can't sit there and moan about something if you haven't done something about it. So if you want to see your sport head in what you believe is the right direction, then you should attend the AGM regardless of who you're voting for. It's your chance to see where to guide where you think the sport should go. But ultimately, if you are a UK PSA member, you are watching this and you support what I do, and you think that I would do the role as is required, and you think I would do the role well and for the ultimate good for the sport, then please give up your Sunday, or it's really just a Sunday afternoon, and head down to the UK PSA AGM to vote, and specifically vote for me for treasurer, because that would be awesome. There's a lot of, I think, really good ideas. I've been speaking to current members of the Executive Council. I've been speaking to a mixture of people that are running for roles as well this year. And I think amongst them there, we have some, first of all, I think we can work really effectively as a team. I think, it's not just one person. It's not a dictatorship. At the end of the day, the exec is made out of 5 people, and they have to vote on every decision. There's also the council as well, which is made up, I think, about around 18 people. And again, they all vote to see to guide where the association is going. So there's no dictatorship. It is incredibly diplomatic, but the more you can work with other members of exec, other members of council, I think the more efficient the organisation is going to be, and the more ultimately it can achieve in its main goal, which is the furtherance of practical shooting here within the UK. So I'm not going to sort of read it verbatim. It's quite a long post, but if you want to see my sort of full proposal for the role of treasurer, then head over to the English Shooting Facebook page. This is the post. Let me just close. Facebook always love to bring up stuff like people's messages when I'm on live stream. But yeah, you can see. So the proposal that I submitted to council for the role is here. This is the exact one, and then I've added a little bit more to it to expand on it, and of course every candidate does have the opportunity to speak in front of the AGM, to maybe go further into detail or expand even further on it, basically give a little bit of a pitch and a proposal to the membership, and also to be there to ask questions. So if you want to ask any questions now of why I think I would be a good treasurer for the UK PSA, I will answer them. Any questions of what you think that, about what I want to do. Like, ultimately, I want the association to grow, and I want more facilities across the UK for practical shooting to take place. I think one of the main motivators to do this is, so often I'm the first point of contact for a lot of people entering or trying to enter shooting sports. And what I hear time and time again is, I'd love to get involved in practical shooting, but the nearest range is 2 hours away. And yes, I sort of laugh and joke a lot of the time of, well, if you're not prepared to travel, then, practical shooting probably isn't the sport for you. But that really shouldn't be the case. That's sort of how it is, but that shouldn't be. That isn't necessarily what it should be. And I'm in that same boat. The nearest, apart from, I say, completely contradict myself here, apart from when Kentucky Firearms Club runs a match literally 10 minutes down the road from me, but they're not that regular. The nearest place where I can actually go and do practical shooting to me, apart from when they run down the road, it's probably when Kentucky Firearms Club runs events at the quarry, which is still like over an hour away for me. I mean, there is Bisley, but Bisley isn't IPSC, so that's a bit tricky. The nearest club that really has sort of practical shooting facilities is probably Worcester Norton. Maybe Yeovil, maybe it's tied with Yeovil, but they're both like 2 hour drives for me. So even I struggle to practice, and even I struggle to well, not necessarily take part, because I'll drive up to the depth of Scotland to go to a practical match. On that, they're running like a 2-gun sort of semi-tournament, I think, in February at Recoil. So if you're interested in that, go and check out Recoil on Facebook. And I'll drive up to that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a level 3 match, mainly because I'm desperate for experience and practice. So I think growing the amount of clubs and facilities offering practical shooting should be sort of umro numero in responsibility, or in sort of goals in growing the association, and ultimately that comes down to money, right? Murray, who's Murray? That comes down to money, and that comes down to the treasurer role. So I know a lot of people. There's been a couple of people when I've been speaking to them that said, "Oh, hang on a minute, your treasurer is a little bit more of a backroom role. Mate, why not PRO? Why not another role?" Well, looking at the roles that are available on exec, and there's a lot of that have the secretary is standing down, the PRO is standing down, treasurer is standing down, the chairman is standing down. The only position that isn't actually standing down is the RD. So there are 4 effectively vacant positions, which you wouldn't be necessarily challenging somebody else, like taking it away from somebody that wants to do it in order for you to do it. So I look at secretary. That's not something I think I'm it's definitely something that I would throw my all into. I think my passion and dedication would sort of drive me to do that, but it's not. I think there are other people that can do that job better. In terms of chairman, again, I think that's probably, I don't want to necessarily stereotype, but that's probably for somebody a little older, somebody with a few more notches within the sport and within the organization that can sort of command that instant respect to fulfill the constitution, to fulfill the bylaws, and to be able to effectively hold these meetings. So and then what was secretary, chairman, so RD, again, RD, it takes a I think, a much higher level of IPSC, and again, somebody that has been established in it longer than myself. And it's, you know, okay, with RD, you do get to travel to all of the world shoots, and you know, I certainly wouldn't mind that. But really, when I look at it, my skill set and my experience either puts me down for PRO or treasurer. And, you know, PRO, I think I would do a really good job with that. But there's somebody that I know quite well and has done the role previously that is running for it again. And I think, you know, they will ultimately do the role better overall. Because of their experience in doing it. They've already done it before. They've been part of, there's this Vision 26, it used to be Vision 25, which is all about growing and progressing the association. So they were part of creating that and sort of seeing that through. Unfortunately, they had to step down, and Vision 26 hasn't really gone anywhere since then. So them coming back, I think is a big plus. And I don't necessarily want to get in the way with that. I could probably sit here and I'm sure I will have jokes with him how I feel I could do the job better. And again, I think passion, determination, and grit would get me through that. But he's going to be able to come in straight away and sort of as he never less. So if you want, and I keep talking a lot about. I haven't actually mentioned his name yet, and it's Jim Nixon. So, you know, I've worked a lot with James, and all of these proposals are available within the UK PSA official group, so you can go and check those out later. But Jim has put forward his proposal for Public Relations Officer, PRO, and again, given his experience in the role previously, I think some of the great stuff he did. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I'm so you know, I'm so involved in and passionate about making videos and promoting the UK PSA. James was a big part in me getting involved in that, and it was actually James that I went out to the Rifle World Shoot with and stayed. We travelled out there together. We stayed out there while I was filming. And, you know, and because he was PRO at the time, he was fully supportive of doing that, and it was some fantastic publicity for the organization. So, you know, I don't necessarily need to be PRO to continue filming, to continue pushing it. So I think Jim is going to be suited for the role, and on that, Jim has my full support and backing. I think he's going to do more fantastic work for the association. And, you know, given that we've worked together previously, given that we have collectively or together done great things in terms of publicity for the association, I think it goes without saying that we will be able to work together in you know, on exec if I'm successful in obtaining the treasurer position. There's also you know, other roles. Now, unfortunately, I think there's only two. Well, fortunately, unfortunately, there's only two other people. Well, there's 4 people in total that I think have put out their full proposal, and one of those is the other person running for treasurer. So obviously, I think you can forgive me for sitting here and saying that I think I'm going to do the job better. I wouldn't still be running if I didn't think that. So there's been no other proposals put out for other positions apart from the RD role, the regional director role. And again, this is somebody that I've worked with. So the current regional director is still standing, but Richard Clifton is also standing for it as well. So again, his proposal is within the UK PSA group for you to go and see. It's PDF there, but he has actually put, I think, he's put the full image there, so you can go and read that. Again, I've worked with Richard previously, and you know, we've worked well. I'm looking forward that if he is successful, I'm going to stop moving that about now. But yeah, the UK PSA official group, you can go and look at all of those. And I think Richard, there's, it's not necessarily about changing and mixing things up. I think there is a really good structure and good direction at the moment that the association has taken, but I think there is a benefit for new people with maybe fresh motivation, enthusiasm, and maybe a different ideas is needed. I think that's needed in any organization, be that a charity or commercially. You need to keeps things fresh. So there's a reasonable amount of stability whilst there are 4 roles going. They're all I think there's other experienced people coming in. I mean, Richard's already he's still on council. I believe Jim is already on council, so they're already up to speed on what they are doing. And having worked with Richard before, having worked with Jim before, I think if they are successful and myself is successful, we will be able to work together very, very well. Of course, there are 2 other positions to be fulfilled, but there's no real proposals being put out for them, so I can't really comment on them. I know all of the candidates that are running, so I think the only one that's been named for secretary is Graham Mitchell. He's incredibly dedicated to the support. Quite often see him on the circuit. He's actually more, I think, of a behind the scenes guy. He's going up there the week before building stuff, so he's got a huge amount of dedication for the association, and he's going for secretary, which will require a high level of dedication to be able to fulfill correctly. And then I think for chair, it's Dave Joy, again incredibly dedicated to the role into the sport. People sort of refer to him as the Oracle. You will normally see him. Normally, if you see him on a range, it's not a good thing, because he's usually the range master and he's been called to a potential DQ. But incredibly fair in his application of the rules, and has overturned DQs because he's gone, no, that's the wrong interpretation, or no, that's not what the rules are not there to be interpreted, they are to be followed as fact. Very, very knowledgeable and established within IPSC. But then also Andy Williams, that is running for chair. He's the current secretary, so if he was to be successful, there is that sort of same uniform, there's that consistency in a way. Whilst it's a new role, he spent a lot of time on council, so on the exec council, so there's that stability and sort of reassurance. Anyway, but yeah, I think in terms of the proposals that have been released for the PRO and for RD, both Richard and Jim have my full support. I think they will do very, very good things for the association, and I think their proposals do suggest that. So yes, practical shooter way DQ Dave. He's not necessarily DQ Dave. He just happens to appear when you are DQ'd, and it's like no, I won't get into the detail, but yeah, anyway, back onto sort of my proposal. So I'd appreciate not just coming to support and potentially voting for myself, but also looking at the people that I've talked about and coming there to vote for them as well. In terms of why treasurer, so I've explained why not the PRO. Why treasurer? Well, I think it's the worst kept secret that within Magload there's a very distinct dynamic between myself and Connors. Connors makes it and I sell it. Like that's always been the relationship that we've had. He doesn't want anything to do with any of the admin, the general running, general management. He just literally wants to sit there and make cool stuff. So my role from the beginning of Magload, and I had I was involved with and still involved with a company prior to that, which I was already responsible for. But coming into Magload, I'm responsible for the general management and the day-to-day running of it. That also includes the accounts. there's also the accounts of the 2 other companies that I'm responsible for as well. So, you know, I'm responsible for doing the accounts, the bookkeeping, the budgeting, the annual returns, and the VAT returns for 3 different companies. And you know, the treasurer's role, in black and white, is to keep a faithful record of all transactions, all monetary transactions within the association, and deliver the report. Well, if I'm able to do that successfully, and have done that for a number of years now for 3 different limited companies, then I can do that for the association. But you know, in my mind, there's a lot more to the role. It's not just about doing that, but helping the association grow. And in terms of a treasury role, that's looking for additional revenue, increasing the revenue of the association. The UK PSA is a registered charity, and whilst a charity isn't there to make money, it's not there to make a profit. It's there to achieve their charitable goals, and to achieve pretty much anything you need funding. And usually the more funding you have, the more money you have available, the more you can achieve. So increasing the revenue of the organization will, I think, be very important to growing it. And I think, in terms of my professional career, I've been able to grow Magload specifically. I've been, I think, apart from Connor's making the absolutely incredible products that he does, the growth is in no small part to myself. So, the revenue side of things, the monetary side of things, the accounting side of things, and general management, that's what I do day to day. So, I think not only can I fulfill the role, but I can use what I've done and the successes that I've had within business to help the UK PSA and further the sport of IPSC. Back to the problem of having more facilities. Well, that's about identifying new clubs that could put on or offer practical shooting facilities. That's all about funding, right? That's all about going out there and helping to supply the equipment. It's also about training new ROs, training training instructors. That all takes sort of time and money, and I think I can increase the revenue. I think I can fulfill the role, and I think ultimately there's very few people out there that are as passionate and dedicated, not just to shooting sports, but practical shooting. And I think all of that combined sort of makes me the perfect candidate for the role. But yeah, there we go. There's my pitch. Long and the short of it. Where is the AGM? That's probably what a lot of people are asking. The long and the short of it, like, if you think I would do a good job, and I really do believe that I will, and you want to come down and support me in doing that, then I'd be incredibly grateful for you doing so, and really do think that I can help alongside the rest of exec push the sport forward and grow it within the UK. So let me find the address. I actually posted the address in the English Shooting group, which I'm currently scrolling. Here we go. So it is, I'll show it on screen for you guys. It is the Arden Hotel, Coventry Road, Bicken-Hill, Solihull, B920EH. Bring that up on screen. So the AGM starts from 2:00, so I think it's advised that you get there from about 1:30. And yeah, there's the address. That's where you need to go, and it's this Sunday. So I know you might have planned to stay indoors from the cold, but again, it would be immensely appreciated if you are able to come and support myself and the other people standing, because you don't stand for these roles unless A, you think you can do the job, and B, that you have something to offer. Stop struggling. That sounds... Are you talking to me or your victim? 2-hour plus drive to sit down in a room to tick a box and drive home. Seems a little wasteful when we can do it online instead. Like, yes, this has been this. You're not alone, Daniel. Like, seriously, I don't know why. Yes, I think this is quite an important thing. The reason I'm showing you the address and why I'm pleading with you to potentially give up your Sunday and drive to that location to vote is that it is only in-person voting. There's been a lot of complaints, a lot of hoo-ha around why we can't do it online, why we can't have proxy voting. Now, this has been done in the past, but I think this was more down to necessity with COVID. You literally couldn't have the in-person meetings, so they found a way around it. Personally, I thought the remote AGMs worked very well. I think that, you know, I understand the drive. I think this is ultimately where the decision was made, is that the you know, I think the council wanted people, they wanted to use the opportunity to get people back together and be like, look, we can have a public and a face-to-face AGM again. Let's get people back together how it was. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people going, yeah, I value that thought, but I'd rather sit on the sofa and watch it from a laptop, and that's far easier and cheaper. I mean, cost with the price of petrol, that has been an issue. It's, you know, dedication, people wanting to give up their Sunday to come down hasn't necessarily been an issue, but it's like, it's going to cost me £100 round trip to go down there. Some people, you know, from up in Scotland, they've said, I would have to stay in a hotel to be able to do it. I'm not doing that mammoth drive, staying there and going all the way back up. It's going to cost me hundreds of pounds to do. Like, and sort of out of the people are saying almost in a way out of principle, they're not doing it because they should be able to do it online. Personally, I'm in favour of going the online route. Perhaps I can make that as my first pledge if I am elected treasurer. I'll make sure that next year the funding is given to be able to do it online. I think it needs it. We're moving, you know, technology now is part of everybody's day-to-day life. You know, the only concerns is about manipulation of the votes, so that would have to be taken into account. It would have to be a you know, a complete, robust, secure system and validated. But again, they were able to do that last year, and I think having a hybrid system would be ultimately best. Still having that face-to-face AGM, but allowing people, if they choose to view it from online. So that's certainly something I'd be looking at. Does Callum want to be a treasurer because he has a Kevlar purse? I wish I had a Kevlar purse. No, I just think it's where I can potentially do the best for the association. You know, pure and simple. And, you know, something is that, you know, there's no strings attached, right? There's no ulterior motive to do it, apart from the fact that I just bloody love this sport, that I want to see it grow. I want everyone to be doing this sport. I want everyone to have the ability to at least try it once. And that's my, you know, at the end of the day, there's not much about me that isn't put out there online, or that I don't put out there online myself. So, you know, what you see is what you get. You know, I'm not running on behalf of anybody else. I'm running for myself. I want to do this for the association because I think I can do a really good job of it. Murray seems to be on your mind. Oh, I don't know why. It's late. It's been a long week. Timothy Ward was online last year because of the Wu flu. Should have just kept it that way, although last year I really wanted to attend to have my trophy presented to me. Yeah, that I'm sure that hurt, like, you know, winning, becoming the standard shotgun champion, and just potentially just seeing the trophy beyond the screen. I think that is a big point actually of why there still needs to be a physical AGM. You know, somebody that has done well and become the champion in their within their discipline and division, they deserve the opportunity to accept that award in front of the other members. You know, that may not be the main motivator for people, but that's certainly a reward that should, I think, be at least offered. I'm sure there's people that will want to turn that down and not accept it in public. They have the option to do it, but to not give them the option to accept it, I think is wrong. Is there anything we should know? I don't know, is there? No, about... Oh, Murray seems to be on your mind. Is there anything we should know? No, I don't know why Murray is on my mind at all. Fantastic. Callum, when you hopefully become the treasurer, can people who attend the AGM invoice you travel costs and expenses? No, because we will fund the... I will ensure funding is made available. And again, this is a point, is like, this isn't, again, it's not a dictatorship. Even when it comes to the money as treasurer, expenditure has to be approved by exec and council, depending on what the expenditure is exactly for. So it's not like I'll suddenly be able to rock up and go, right, I am going to build the world's best range in Portsmouth, right? The world's best practical shooter, practical facility in Portsmouth, right? Even as treasurer, I won't have the authority to be able to do that. It's balanced because there's a democratic council put in place. Because first of all, exec council is voted upon, then exec have to vote upon who they are going to put in place for the sort of general council, and then any decisions have to be voted upon between council and exec. So there's not complete autonomy in that. There are checks and balances to make sure that you don't get an individual that goes just completely off the wall. But no, I will certainly strongly suggest that that funding should be made available to move the AGM online at the very least. And there's people talking about proxy voting, about postal voting. That's certainly again something that can be looked at and considered. At the end of the day, the online voting has worked before. I don't see necessarily why it won't work again. And another thing that I would like to see is the AGMs streamed. There's a lot of stuff that is presented within the AGM, and I think there's a lot of members that may not choose to go to there, but there's for factors beyond their control, a lot of members that can't make it. And just because they're not able to make it for genuine reasons doesn't mean that they should, lose out on the ability to see it and in some way capture what's going on. So yeah, streaming the and it will require, if there's going to be online voting, although online voting doesn't necessarily have to have streaming, but I think it's prudent to have it. So streaming and online voting is certainly something that I'd want to look to deliver. Andy Carlos, it's just by Birmingham Airport. How long does the AGM last for? It depends. It really does depend. It depends on how many people are running, because if there's lots of people running for all positions, then you're going to hear all of their proposals. They're going to have all their time to talk. It's definitely going to be, I think, sort of an early... till an early evening thing, because they have to go through minutes, they have to go through the agenda, they have to talk about the finance treasurer has to talk about the state of the finances and the annual report, and then they sort of disband. That I think usually takes around an hour, again depending on how smoothly things go. So that's, it starts at 2. So you're looking probably at least 3-4 o'clock until people are actually giving their proposals. If you say maybe 10-15 minutes per proposal and 2 people running per position, and there's 10 positions, then you're talking 5 positions. So there's 10 people giving giving their proposals. So just to make the maths a little easier, if you say 10 minutes per proposal, then you're going to be talking about an hour and 40 minutes. So that's 2 hours of listening to people. Now, it's not a continuous listening, because I think the way it works is, from memory, is that their position will be effectively pitched for by the people, then there's a vote, they are effectively elected, and then you go on to the next position, there's proposals. So it's sort of broken up. But yeah, you'll talk, with the voting as well. I can't remember how long it took for the votes, but yeah, you're probably talking another, at least another 2 to 3 hours to get those people voted in. I'm really not selling it, am I? I'm really not encouraging. Again, it's I would be writing off the whole afternoon and an evening. And I know, again, that's a big problem for people if you have to travel far. You know, even if it finishes at 6, 7 o'clock and you're 3 hours away, you're not getting back till 9, 10, and then it's work the next day. I completely understand, but it's the dedication required to see this sport grow. And I would look at it like that. You can be one of those smug people going, I went to the AGM. It's usually interesting. So, you know, I'm sure there will be interesting moments and interesting discussions at the very least. So yeah, I mean, 1, 2 hours for the first bit, 2, 3 hours for the second. So you're talking about 5 hours. So yeah, it's probably going to be around 6, 7. Yeah, so it's a big meeting. There's a lot of people there as well. I think they're expecting like at least 150 people. Personally, I'd like to see more, because it's a membership of about 1,400 people. So you're seeing about 10% of the membership turn up. I'd love to see all 1,400 people there. That's, you know, if you're part of the sport, I think you should be having in some way a say, whether you're voting or, you know, seeing what's going on. But anyway, that's basically it. I've spent far too much of the stream talking about running for UK PSA Treasurer, but I'm sure I hope you can see that it is something that I'm passionate about. It is something that, you know, I want to do, and I want to do well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to potentially doing it if I am voting in. But that could be down to you. So if you want to see me as Treasurer, attend the AGM, the UK PSA AGM this Sunday from 2 o'clock, just by Birmingham Airport. All of the details are on the UK PSA website as well. Happy to get a good representation of the membership. Everyone should be able to vote. Couldn't agree more. To not confuse it with the voting online, people could vote before the meeting and lock it in. I think that's what people are discussing with the likes of postal votes. Arian, campaigning should be happening at least 2 months in advance, followed by voting starting a week prior to the AGM. 100% agree. And I ended up, I knew that I was going to roll for Treasurer. Well, I was talking to the current Treasurer back in early December, and I don't know necessarily whether it would be appropriate to have sort of started then. I mean, you know, whether or not you get proposed. I mean, I've been proposed by the current Treasurer, so I think in some ways I can take that as quite a good endorsement. The guy currently doing the role is sort of advocating that I'd be able to do it as well, which you know, I'm incredibly grateful for. And yeah, I think, you know, I wanted to do it this side of Christmas, but yeah, I think a week, maybe 2 months is maybe a bit too long. You know, but at least there should. Personally, I think there should be a minimum, you know, the way as it stands at the moment, anybody can stand for a position up to the point of the voting. So anybody from the floor can go, right, I want to stand for this. You need to be proposed by a member and then seconded by a member. But anybody can stand up and run. So, you know, that would need changing. I don't know necessarily if the members want that change, but that would need changing to basically enforce the whole, because if you say you must campaign 2 months or a week or 2 weeks prior to the AGM and they don't, then they're not allowed to stand. So it would need changing, you know, bylaws, changing potentially the constitution. So yeah, there's not necessarily a small move, but yeah, I think really if you're running for a role for council, you should be putting out your proposal. You should be giving the members the best chance possible to make an informed decision, to be able to compare different proposals, prepare questions. Like, you know, if you want to run I think an honest and transparent campaign, that's the way it should be. And personally, I think, you know, it shows, I think, not necessarily the seriousness that somebody is taking it, but it almost seems in a way, if you're not putting out your proposal beforehand, it's sort of like oh well, I don't, can I really be bothered to do that? It's, you need to show a level of commitment to it, and campaigning's all a part of that. Wasn't sure if English Shooting had mentioned his upcoming holiday to Swindon. No, not yet. Am I allowed to mention? Does it rhyme with Snickers? Am I allowed to talk about what rhymes with Snickers? Some people are just going to get that straight away. But anyway, am I allowed to, Black Guinea Pig? Because I will. Just stream the AGM on Twitch and let the viewers vote. Oh, because I can't see any issues with that going wrong. I heard last year AGM was spicy. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily as smooth as I think some people would have liked. An online live stream for those who can't make the AGM for any reason would be good, and to have the option to vote. I completely agree. Brian, falling asleep here, his pitch never ending, way too long. I think he should have done a separate video, not a live stream. I didn't intend to do it as a live stream. It's my passion that rolls over. So yeah, let me know, Guinea Pig, if I can talk about that, and we will get on to some more big topics. I think so. Rich has mentioned it. Cool. I'll get on to that in a sec. So in terms of other big news, the pitch over, I promise. In terms of other big news, there was a recent article in the Sun about the shooting in Plymouth. So Killer's Rampage, chilling moment, incel mass shooter roamed the streets with a shotgun during an 8-minute rampage that killed 5 people in Plymouth. And we'd already heard not rumours, but reports of this going on, but this sort of confirms it without doubt about the action that has so far been taking place. Now, I don't think this necessarily removes them from potential prosecution from criminal charges, but it's certainly big news in terms of an outcome. So obviously the inquest for the Plymouth shooting is going on at the moment, and out of a criminal probe was previously launched by the Independent Office for Police Conduct into Devon and Cornwall's Police Firearms Licensing Group. 2 members of staff have since been served with gross conduct notices, and an officer has been given with misconduct notice. So to me, like being served with gross misconduct, that's dismissal. And to be served with gross misconduct, you have done something very, very bad, or you certainly haven't done your job to a very high degree. And if we need any more confirmation that what happened at Plymouth is due to the failings of obviously certain members of staff within Devon and Cornwall Police's firearms licensing unit, then this is it, right? This isn't necessarily the solution. I think this is the punishment for the people that ultimately made the main mistake. And don't get me wrong, the person ultimately responsible is the guy with the gun, but these 2 members of staff obviously played a massive part in allowing that person to have a firearm, and therefore should be in some way culpable. So they've been served with gross misconduct. So this confirms that it was a failing of firearms licensing in that case. In terms of what should happen, well, why were they allowed to conduct gross misconduct? Why were they allowed not to do their job? Why were they allowed to do their job incorrectly? That's where I think we are going to see the biggest prevention of shootings going forward, is holding firearms licensing to task, having an independent body to review firearms licensing departments and make sure that they are doing the job correctly. So yeah, obviously with the inquest going on, we spoke earlier about what the senior police officer had said, and in a way dispelled it fairly quickly. So this inquest, I think, is going to there's going to be a lot more coming out of this, so we will probably have to visit this on another live stream. We probably may even cover it in a future video. In terms of some more positive, I like to keep it nice and balanced and to and froing as we can. So what Black Guinea Pig is referring to is that I have been very kindly invited to see a Vickers collection, not just Vickers, but a whole host of militaria collection, from everything from the smallest stuff to the biggest stuff. So Black Guinea Pig is responsible for this 100%, and I believe that I'm going to butcher the name, but he's part of a Vickers club where they regularly go out and actually shoot with these Vickers and demonstrate them so that people can see them in action. So it's not something you get to see every day, like a war era machine gun, a Vickers machine gun, and to get there and talk to the guy that collects these, the guy that goes and shoots them, and learn a bit more. Again, I'm always the first one to put my hands up and say, like, I'm not a military buff. I don't have any particularly large experience or knowledge on the history of firearms. I very much like looking at the modern day stuff and where the sport is going, where firearms are going, not necessarily where they've been, but it is something that I still have a passion for, and I would love to learn more. And I think this will be an incredible opportunity to speak with people face to face that are incredibly knowledgeable, but actually have the exact guns in front of them. I am blaming you, Black Guinea Pig. It is entirely your fault. But yes, I'm really excited for the day. So I think we've agreed early February, I think, is the day that we'll be going. So Connor's, he didn't want to go. I really had to convince him. I said to him, look, do you want to go and look at a massive collection of Vickers machine guns? And he was like, to be honest, mate, I've done enough of that in my time. I'd just rather sit here and design new products, to be honest. But I managed to convince him. I managed to drag him along. So we'll be going as well. I do need to talk to you about, because obviously you don't want a huge amount of people going, but I would very much, Arian, I haven't actually confirm this, so Arian's watching this live. I can just liaise about this live. Basically, obviously, with Arian helping out with the channel and filming and editing, so I'd very much, if Rich would have all of us, Connors, Arian and myself, because ultimately, not only am I excited from a personal note to go and see these guns and learn more about them, but we will, of course, be making a video of it. So it will be a complete tour of the collection, learning a little bit more about firearms history. So it'll be very interesting to see, and I'm sure you guys will hopefully enjoy that video. Now, so a little bit of positive news. So we've got to balance it with some, is it negative, or is it just the illogical ramblings of somebody that just hasn't got a clue? I don't know. You can decide. So, I mean, we're not off to a good start, because this article's in The Guardian. Starmer calls for shotgun ownership rethink following Euston shooting. Now, don't for one second that this is solely about the Euston shooting, because he very quickly gets onto the whole Plymouth thing and pump actions, right? But this is just another example of the complete illogicality when it comes to firearms restrictions, firearms law, and firearms licensing. So the backstory to this is that a number of people, including children, were gunned down by a drive-by shooting at a funeral. And now they're calling for rethinks for shotgun ownership. It's like, sorry, it was already illegal for them to have that shotgun because, okay, I don't think it's necessarily been confirmed. I don't know if they have actually arrested somebody, but I'm going to go out here on quite a safe assumption that that was not a lawfully held firearm. So it's already illegal for you to be in possession of a shotgun without authority, which I'm pretty sure they did not have. It's already an offence to be travelling around with a firearm without good reason. It is certainly an offence to lean out of a window and shoot it. Even more of an offence to shoot it at people, and certainly one of the highest offences and worst crimes to commit, to murder people with it. All of those things are already well covered under our laws, right? What is making something even more illegal going to achieve? Right? You're looking in the wrong place here. Labour leader suggests firmer laws over who can own shotguns after drive-by shooting in his constituency. I'm getting so angry I can't get my words out. Tougher laws over who can own shotguns. Maybe people that are going to go and commit drive-bys. Oh wait, we've already got suitability requirements in place to ensure the sort of people that are going to hang out a window and shoot a shotgun at other people don't get hold of them, unless you're in, Devon and Cornwall, of course. But it's like, no, like making stuff more illegal. It's not the certificate holders going out there and shooting people with them, or let's say I'll rephrase that: shoot certificate holders that under the correct checks and vetting don't go out there shooting people with them. It's like, what? That's not the problem. I think the problem is, like, maybe there's not the right level of policing to first catch those sort of people in the first place. Perhaps the bigger societal issue is that there are people that are out there willing to hang out of a moving car and shoot at people. That's not a firearms licensing issue. Right? The laws are already pretty robust. Keir Starmer has said that he could support stronger laws against the ownership of shotguns. Again, I'm saying don't necessarily think that this is all about the shooting, right? Because there has been a building and growing agenda, certainly against pump action shotguns in the wake of Plymouth. We're seeing smaller papers, we're now seeing larger papers approach this and call, and we're seeing larger and larger figures. Previously it was other like MPs, or my constituency, it's Dunblane, so therefore it's important to me. My constituency is Kean, therefore it's important to me. Now, Keir Starmer's had a shooting in his constituency. I mean, to be honest, in London, I would imagine there's a lot of constituencies that actually have, shootings in, unfortunately. But now he's coming in on it. The leader of the opposition, probably, one of the most prominent figures within politics, is now joining in this support stronger laws against the ownership of shotguns. While there is no indication any gun used in Whilst there is no indication any gun used in Saturday's incident, in which 4 women and 2 children were injured by shotgun pellets, was legally owned, Starmer said there was a wider issue of legally held guns being misused. Sorry, what statistics are you quoting? There's a wider issue of legally guns being misused? Sorry. The same statistics that I always, and these are, I don't have the references, but they are supported by references. If challenged, I could go and get the statistics, because it's all from the Office for National Statistics and various reputable sources. But still today, the largest proportion of firearm offences are committed with handguns, right? They were banned in 1997. Didn't really do a lot. I think it's 40%. And that's the single largest proportion of firearm offences is down to a gun that can't be legally owned under a Section 1 or Section 2 certificate. So, in terms of legally held guns being used, well, the single largest proportion of that are guns that can't be legally held or legally used unless you're a Section 5 dealer or a part of the police or military. And apart from, if you work for the Met, then there's potential that as an armed police officer you're committing offences, but you get what I'm saying. There is not an issue, even in terms of deaths due to firearms, right? I think it averages out about 18 there's about 18 deaths per year due to firearms. On average, 1 or 2 of those are down to a legally held firearm, and the majority of those cases is down to suicide, right? I'm not saying that's good, I'm not saying that's necessarily acceptable, but the outright majority, like 95% of all deaths attributed to firearms, are due to illegally held firearms. I really don't see why there is this wider issue of illegally held guns being misused. Let's not forget the previous freedom of information requests that I did ages ago about when we were the lawful firearms community were accused of losing our guns and falling into the hands of criminals, that police and military proportionately lose more guns than the firearm and certificate holders. So, you know, let's not get into finger pointing to the legal gun owners here. Like, once again, we are not the issue. And if you continue to pursue us as the issue, then you're going to be, you know, that's the real travesty, right? You are taking away time, resource, and funding away from actually the real issue, and you're ploughing it into something that is going to absolutely achieve nothing. I think in today's money, the handgun ban costs something like £500 million if it was to happen today. Like, you think about how much £500 million could be, like what that would do to policing if that was injected, right? Like, that could probably pretty much stretch to have a police officer on every corner, right? That's what helps prevent crime, like investigation, information, intel, intelligence, like real policing, out there on the beat policing. That's what helps stop crime, not making something doubly illegal, right? It was already, the potential, jail sentence for committing a drive-by here in the UK, you could be looking 10, 15, 20 years, no problem at all. Just possession of an illegal firearm is a 5-year minimum sentence, right? So the consequences are already pretty severe for going and doing something like that. And now you want to take it away from the people that are quite clearly not doing that? It's just like, what planet are you on? So a 22-year-old man. A 22-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. So actually, fortunately, nobody was actually killed. Doesn't necessarily make it any better, but fortunately nobody was killed. They're just injured following the shooting outside. I mean, so they've got the guy that they think that's done it, and surprise, surprise, they haven't declared that he's a shotgun or firearm certificate holder. But it's like, okay, so somebody without a shotgun or firearm certificate commits a shooting. What are we going to do? We're going to take away the guns from the shotgun and firearm certificate holders. Like, by literal definition, we had nothing to do with this, right? The shooting community had nothing to do with this. Asked on Monday about the incident during a Q&A on LBC Radio, Starmer said, "There are many illegally owned guns out there, and there are legally owned guns." He's a smart man, which I don't think should be in the hands of people who are legally owning them. What? There are many illegally owned guns out there, and there are many legally owned guns, which I don't think should be in the hands of people. No, Keir. It was the illegally owned guns that injured those people, right? The legally held guns were not the problem. So therefore, coming after the legally owned guns isn't going to achieve anything. We've had these incidents from time to time with guns, and every time there is evidence, which I am concerned about, that people have access to guns that they shouldn't have access to. Well, no fucking shit, Sherlock. Like, but what he's talking about there is, like, when there's an incident, like, I'm concerned that lawfully abiding, sensible people have access to guns that were nothing to do with the incident. Or is he actually literally stating the obvious, that when these incidents happen, the people that quite clearly shouldn't have had firearms had access to the guns, because obviously yes, because they had access to the guns because there was a shooting. That's sort of a given. Now, if it's illegal access, obviously that's a pure matter of criminal law. But other people where better checks should be taken over circulations of guns. So I think we need to look again as to whether those laws are strong enough. Yes, yes, they are. The statistics and the facts of the matter absolutely prove that they are. What needs to be ensured is that those checks and those laws are actually enforced by the likes of firearms licensing. It's just like, and of course, you know, one of Starmer's front benches, the Shadow Defence Minister Luke Pollard, has tabled a private members bill seeking to stop people keeping pump-action shotguns in their homes in the wake of. So this is going to become now, like, you know, this is what I was worried about ultimately. Like, you know, not only is he talking absolute drivel, but it's all linking into this, let's ban pump actions because one was used in a shooting that was completely preventable by the laws, checks and balances that are already in place. But let's ban pump actions. Again, we're missing the real issue here, because if we continue to allow the ineffective application of firearms licensing or firearms law or firearms guidance, this is going to continue to happen. Right? It's not about what guns own or what guns people own. This is about making sure that the person is suitable. We can have the argument, agreement, disagreement, whether people should have certificates, whether, you know, people agree or disagree with that. Personally, again, I'm a supporter of our firearms licensing departments and our firearms licensing system when it is being sufficiently implemented. Because I think Kiam is actually a very good case of something that would have been prevented with our firearm, or should have been prevented by our firearms laws, if they are correctly implemented and they are actually applied. Right? Everything was there to prevent that shooting. Right? It just wasn't used. It wasn't administrated correctly. So all this attention being brought away from correcting the issues in firearms licensing, all the distraction from talking about third-party impartial like enforcers of firearms licensing, all this talk, you know, all this distraction from talking from potentially centralizing firearms licensing departments, and you know, all the talk that is about, you know, all the distracting talk about banning new guns, it's going to leave the real problem unsolved. And that's the travesty of it all. That once again, people have lost their lives, and we're not actually going to learn the lesson. We're not going to learn the lesson that banning particular guns makes absolutely no difference, and that it's down to, you know, certainly within the UK, it's been tried and shown many times that it's about effective firearms licensing that really makes the biggest difference. Yeah, firearms licensing isn't going to stop a criminal from smuggling a gun in, from going and stealing one and then going and using it, right? That is a matter for the police and a matter for criminal law. But when people that are suitable, that can pass checks and balances to own guns that are a danger to no one, why should they be the one affected because of for the criminals out there? Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Don't forget, he is both a barrister and a politician, so if his lips are moving, he's lying. He said that firearms shouldn't even be legally owned. Yeah, so I can very much see this is going to become a Labour sort of agenda, and this, you know, small sort of little thing that we saw months ago is just growing and growing and growing and gaining no momentum, which is a real shame, because it's not going to achieve anything, it's not going to do anything, and it's going to once again affect the people that had nothing to do with this, that just want to go out there and safely take part in a sport, go out there and safely and responsibly hunt. It should have it took me longer than it should have to realize we weren't talking about a person wearing a dog collar. Hey? Oh, Vickers. Oh, it's about the Vickers. Okay, I get it. Yeah, Vickers machine gun. Why you update me like this? Sorry. I updated you today about it. We've seen the results of this before. Banning certain firearms does not make them used less in criminality. Perfectly put. Absolutely perfectly put. Are you saying that banning certain firearms not only does nothing to stop gun crimes, but increases the amount of offences? Well, yeah. Statistically, it does. After the handgun ban in 1997, firearm offences increased. So it's like, and every time, that's it. Every time, this was, I can't believe I forgot this quote. Every time since 1920, further restrictions have been introduced from 1920. Firearm offences have increased. So it's like looking at it statistically and looking at a fairly well-established pattern now. The last thing you want to do to reduce firearm offences is to increase the restrictions around them. It's like it just that is case in point of why further restricting, banning certain firearms just does not work. It only seems to work for the criminals. Can I pass the rifle over to you when we come up in Feb? Absolutely. That would be a perfect time to hand it over. Looks like, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that we're finally going to get a Lantac Raven on the channel for a full review. I did try previously. You can check out a previous live stream on all of that. Aaron, you sent me a calendar email invite with Vickers collection, and then I proceeded in Messenger to lay out exactly what was going on. Stop being a little moany one. Can you belt feed a Sten gun? That would be sick. What? Where did that come from? A stun gun would just about work with a mag belt fed. It would jam every second round. Black Guinea Pig now gets put on the Lantac blacklist. Luckily, they don't know who Black Guinea Pig is. And he's going to be like, please don't tell them. Please don't tell them. Suing in the... what are you talking about? Wasn't Keir Starmer supposed to be a top lawyer? He doesn't seem to understand the difference between legal and illegal. As much as I disagree with this country's firearms laws, I do understand that the law is meant for safety, and it is sad to see that it's starting to crack. Absolutely, fully back that. Yep, handgun used in crime went up 40% after the 97 ban, according to the Home Office's own fact. 40%! That's not a small amount, is it? Did any of that statement make sense? It was very poorly written. Yeah, it's somebody just driveling on that obviously don't know what they're talking about. Give me your opinion on the stabilizing brace situation going on in the US, please. To be honest, I don't have a huge. Let's I have a quick Google and refresh myself. Seriously, you guys just need to make a decision. Are arm braces legal or are they illegal? They seem to flip-flop and change depending on what day of the week it is. Stabilizing brace ATF. That will be the one. So what is going on? ATF posts final rule. I love how final is in is there's a final rule. Like, yeah, we'll see you next week for a change. ATF. So this is on the NRA. ATF. Like, ultimately, whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter. Like, what does that have anything to do with the function of a firearm? Like, okay, I know it's effectively a get around, so it can become a pistol, so that you don't have to go and get the tax stamp, or yes. So yeah, if you put an arm brace, or how it used to be, I don't know where it is now, but you know, I think it was along the lines of like, but yeah, if you have a gun with a rifle with less than in the US, I think it's less than a 14-inch barrel. That's the difference between us and the US. 2 inches, because we can go down to 12 inches, and then any further and you end up in prison. But yeah, basically, in order, as far as I understand it, the reason that all these arm braces came about is because if you had a rifle with a barrel of less than 12 inches, it became an SBR. You needed to get a $250 tax stamp. The $250 wasn't exactly the issue. It's the fact that it could take 6 months, 12 months in order to be able to go and get that tax stamp. So what people did is started putting these arm braces on it and saying it's not a stock, therefore it's not a rifle, it's actually a pistol, and with it being a pistol, it can have under a 14-inch barrel. And basically the ATF were like, no, that's you cheeky Watsits. That's no, literally what the ATF said right there. You cheeky Watsits. The I don't know necessarily if any American will get that verbiage, but let's see what's going on. On Friday, January the 13th, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearm and Explosives, ATF, posted the final factoring criteria for firearms with attached stabilizing braces rule to its website. The proposed rule was first proposed by the agency in June 2021 and is the most recent in a long line of ATF guidance, rulings and rules regarding firearms with attached stabilizing braces. The text posted to the ATF website has not yet been submitted to the Federal Register, so is not technically a final rule yet, but it is likely to be posted in the coming week. So what's going on? The new standard. ATF begins the new rule by clarifying that any former guidance or rulings on stabilizing braces are void. The rule then amends the existing definition of rifle by adding the following. For the purposes of this definition, the term designed or redesigned, made or remade, and intended to be fired from the shoulder shall include a weapon that is equipped with an accessory component or other rearward attachment stabilizing brace that provides surface area that allows the weapon to be fired from the shoulder, provided any other factors as described in paragraph 2 indicate that the weapon is designed, made or intended to be fired from the shoulder. When a weapon provides surface area that allows the weapon to be fired from the shoulder, the following factors shall also be considered in determining whether the weapon is designed, made or intended to be fired from the shoulder. Whether the weapon has a weight or length consistent with the weight or length of a similarly designed rifle. So basically, if you have a really heavy genuine pistol, they could screw you with it. Wait, does this mean that long barrel pistols would be considered? Well, no. This is actually a really funny comparison. So long barrel pistols, of course, because of our laws, we're not allowed short arms. So we have to have 12-inch barrels and the rod to make overall 24-inch length. But the Home Office finally gave like the definition of an LB, the difference between a rifle and a long barrel pistol, and it was basically a long barrel pistol is not intended to be shot from the shoulder. So instantly my head went whirring, and I was like, so basically, if you put a little sort of butt pad on the rod, and you say this is intended to be shot from the shoulder, then a long barrel pistol becomes a rifle in terms of the Home Office, and therefore you can share them. you know, because, you know, the battle arms, so the battle arms rifle that I use for competition, right? That's genuinely a rifle, right? It's predominantly shouldered, but because it's so bloody light, I could pistol grip it. I could quite easily be pistol gripping that rifle and effectively use it. So, you know, if that rifle has been built with the purpose of being used as a pistol, does it then become an LBP? Can it then be shared? So it's like this whole thing is ridiculous. The fact that you can share a 2.2 AR-15 under the mini rifle exemption, under Home Office approved club exemption, but not a pistol with a rod and a longer barrel. Like, it's, for all intents and purposes, like, they do the same thing. And ultimately, that's what I think with this whole pistol brace thing. Like, does it really matter if it's an SBR? Does it really matter if you've got a moderator? Like, if you've already got an AR-15, like, why does it matter if it's small or big? And especially in a country where you can own pistols. It's like, well, we don't want a rifle being concealable, but you can go and buy a 50 cal Desert Eagle. Like, so basically what they've tried to do is to completely stop any get around with the law, with, you know, pistol braces and this. Basically, they are giving themselves as much, not necessarily as much vagueness as possible to be able to manipulate it how they want, but they're certainly giving them enough wiggle room to be able to go to a judge. This is a rifle. We all know it's a rifle. Now within law, we now have the ability to define this as a rifle, and, you know, it's an SBR, so he needs a tax stamp and he hasn't got one. Therefore, it's he's in violation. Why people message me during the stream? That's why you message me during the stream. What do you think? Video idea. This is live from Arian. Video idea. 5 of the craziest gun laws in the world. That would be pretty cool, actually. I like that idea. Yes, we shall do. We shall do. Stuart, are you thinking of getting a Section 7.3? Not at the moment. Less than 16 inches, is it? Anything under 16 inches. Oh, well, I don't know why I had 14 inches. There's an even bigger difference between us and the US, and that's 4 inches. Yeah, so 16 inches not. That's why everyone's gone for 16-inch barrels on their guns, because they thought it was, it is 16 inches. So where were we with that? Am I thinking of getting a Section 7.3? No, not at the moment. I won't rule it out later down the line, but the general thing is, you know, yes, there's the historical appreciation. You know, I'm getting a little bit more into that in terms of my passion for firearms and shooting, but you know, really the main reason I'd be motivated to go for a 7.3 is to be able to shoot handguns. And at the end of the day, the main reason I want to shoot handguns is for competition. You can't use them for that under 7.3. You can't even shoot them at a target for 7.3. And they cost a lot of money. You know, even a basic bog standard sort of Section 7.3 gun is talking about £1,000. Plus, it's the hundreds of pounds to have it transported, and then hundreds of pounds to have it stored, and the increased range fees to go and shoot it. And personally, like, for what I'm enjoying, you know, what my main interests are in shooting at the moment, I'd rather use that money to go and compete in more matches, to go and shoot handguns competitively abroad. You know, going out to America, going out to Europe. So yeah, it's something I'd love if it wasn't so expensive. If I had unlimited time and unlimited money, 100% I'd be into 7.3. But you know, I do need to focus my attention in some way, and then I also need to budget in some way. Bump stocks ruled as illegal last week. I think it was. So bump stocks, I thought they got binned a while back, actually. How hard are 7.3s really to obtain? as far as I understand it, it's not super difficult. As long as you're going for a gun that is under the pre-approved list, and you're genuine about it, you have a genuine interest in the history, you genuinely want to form a collection, and you can demonstrate that, there should be no issue with going for a 7.3. I know quite a few people with it, and people of all experiences. It's not something that you have to have been shooting for like 10 years. There's a fair few people that are fairly new into the sport of shooting, mainly because they want to collect, that have gone into 7.3. So yeah, it's maybe a little bit more of an exclusive area of firearms ownership here within the UK, but I don't think it's overly difficult to be able to do. To give you a bit of a white pill, my generation, Gen Z, have much greater interest in firearms due to the channels like you, Hitchcock 45, Demolition Ranch, etc. Well, that's nice to hear. Well, that's why I do it. That's why I do the channel, is to share the sport and get people interested in it, and get people taking part in it. Look up the ATF's chart on what to do with your brace. What? Look up the ATF's chart. So I guess it's going to be on the main proposal, right? What do you mean the chart to do with what to do with your... To learn more, final submitted... I don't know. Where is the chart? What chart are you... just ATF... chart, pistol brace, pistol grip, brace. What? I don't know what you mean by chart. Like, are you looking at? Is it the meme ones? What is this? This looks. Factoring criteria for firearms with attached... I don't know. I'm shooting in the dark here. What do you mean by ATF chart? It's on the ATF website. ATF. Oh dear. Oh dear. This is not a website I wanted to be going on. Final rule. Let's bring you guys on the journey with me. New open letter. So, oh no, go back. New final rule factor. Final rule was who is affected by this rule. What you need to know. Is it the quick reference sheets? Where am I going? Tell me. Guide me. How do I complete? What's some of the fun come up? New. What am I looking for? What do I need to click on? Tell me. Is it the reference sheet? Oh, affected parties and their options under the stabilizing brace final rule. What? How is that an option? It's a pistol brace. Oh no, you can't possibly take the pistol brace off there. We might just destroy the whole firearm. So let's have 1 minute. Unlicensed possessors affected by this rule. Replace short barrel with a barrel that is longer than 16 inches or longer. Sensible. Remove the brace so it cannot be reattached. What do they mean by reattached? Is that like get a bespoke buffer tube, or basically is possession of a pistol brace now an issue? But what if you put a pistol brace on a genuine pistol? Or what if you put a pistol brace on a SBR? Forfeit the firearm to a local ATF office. Give me your guns. Destroy the firearm. Utterly ridiculous. Register for a tax stamp. I mean, like, honestly, that should be the first option, right? You've got a gun that we have a form for that you can register on e-form during 120 days prior to the compliance date. Not required to pay the $200 making tax during the 100. Like, that should be the first option, right? You've got a gun that we have a process for you to be able to own. Here's that option. Certain governmental entities affected by this rule. God. Okay, if that is the chart, that is just a little, like, destroy fire. Like, there's no other way. There is no, we must destroy it or give it to us. Destroy it or give it to us. Like, yeah, okay, fairly sensible. If you don't want to go through this, but that's the option. If you want to keep the gun in its current form, just go through there. The ATF put up a chart on what to do in the... Oh, okay, so yeah, I found it. That's it. Cool, I found it in the end. That picture would actually make an AR-15 and SB... oh, that's brilliant. I hadn't even noticed that. What Black Guinea Pigs is saying is actually, if you did that to destroy the firearm, you wouldn't actually be making the process. You wouldn't making things better for you. That is an SBR. Does a medical condition like cerebral palsy, right side hemiplegia, prohibit you from obtaining a firearms license? There's no real... I'm speaking in general terms here. There's no real mental or physical condition that will automatically prohibit you from being able to have a firearm. It's down to the ultimately the severity of that mental or physical health issue, and if the severity of that mental or physical health issue is likely to make you a danger to yourself or the public. There are plenty of people that are disabled, both physically and mentally, within shooting sports that own firearms because they're still able to function in their day-to-day lives, and they don't pose a danger to themselves or anybody else. I think with physical conditions it's more well known, but it is sort of a myth that any sort of mental health issue is automatically going to exclude you. It's very, very hard because mental health issues are so varied. They affect people in different ways, and there's so many different types. So it really depends on your own situation. But what I say to everyone is that if you're unsure about a mental or physical health issue being an issue in applying for firearms, go and speak to your GP, because your GP is going to be the one ultimately. Well, the police are going to be the ones ultimately to make the decision. But if you go to your GP and say, "Would you support my application to apply for a firearm or shotgun certificate?" and they say yes, then you've got the best medical opinion that you're going to be able to get. So that's really the best way to take it. Give it to us. So no, I'm not saying that. Cut down the barrel doesn't legally destroy the firearm in the US. Well, technically it wouldn't. Cutting down the barrel doesn't destroy it here. If you cut down the barrel on LBP, you've got a Section 5. Shooting is one of the very few sports that is very much accessible for all disabled men, women, etc. It's crazy that it's not promoted more, given the focus is on equality these days. I know. You would think all of these people going on, all the, I don't really like the phrase, but all the woke people, they should love shooting sports. Like, it's one of the very few sports that men and women can compete on a completely level playing field, and regularly do. Like, okay, IPSC, I've talked a lot about it, I'll keep it short. IPSC, men and women are scored in the same category. Yes, we have a ladies division, but that's not separate to the overall. If a woman goes in to an IPSC shooting competition and wins overall, they beat the men in the overall, they will beat the men in their division, as well as taking the ladies. If anything, it's positive discrimination. We should have the overall division winner. You should have a ladies the ladies winner, and we should have a man's winner to make things all equal and all that. Actually, it gives more for the ladies to win. If a lady wins her division overall, so like standard shotgun division, they win both the overall and the ladies division. travesty. But yes, we are an incredibly accessible and diverse and equal sport. Anyway, on that note, it's a fairly long one tonight. Before I do head off, if you haven't already, hit that like button. It makes a huge difference to the channel. Again, if you are free for the UK PSA AGM this Sunday and you are a member, you do have to be a member to attend, then I'd really appreciate your support and your vote for my bid in becoming treasurer. Yeah, I hope you all have if I don't see you on Sunday, I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead and get lots of shooting in. Again, don't forget, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and of course, as always, guys,